We talked a lot about the past, the present, and now we'll talk about the future. And the future will be digital, as you will see. So I have the honor to chair this panel. So I'll start introducing the members of the panel to you. So we have, so if you look at the screen, so in the bottom, we have Noam, who's joining us from Indiana, I think, in the United States. So he's a professor of economics at the Columbia University Business School, and it's Garrett Professor of Public Policy and Business Responsibility. He's the director of the Columbia Institute for Teleinformation, a research center focusing on management and policy issues in communications, internet and media. Eli has published over 350 articles and 37 books, which is quite impressive. He served also as a commissioner of public services for New York State and on the White House's president's IT advisory board. Here, physically present with us, we have Josef Schroefl, who's the deputy director for the Strategy and Defense Community of Interest at the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats in Helsinki, Finland. Josef started his career in the Austrian Armed Forces and worked since that in various areas of the military, including several UN tours. And since 2006, he served in the Austrian Ministry of Defense, heading comprehensive approach, hybrid threats, and cybersecurity, cyber defense. Josef published several articles and books on asymmetric cyber and hybrid threats, crisis, conflict, and warfare. We also have with us Fabrizio Sestini, who actually is not in the program, so I have to actually grab his bio from my phone, because he kindly agreed to join us for this session, because he's been working at the European Commission for 25 years, and he currently leads the European Commission innovation programs under the Next Generation Internet, so NGI. As a senior expert in digital social innovation at DG Connect. So Fabrizio's areas of interest is technical social research on distributed architectures for decentralized data governance as part of the European Union's efforts towards a people-centric next generation internet. In his career at the European Commission, Fabrizio launched and managed several research initiatives related to these aspects, focusing on the social applications of network technologies. In particular, he has defined and launched the 5 million EIC award on blockchains for social good to stimulate decentralized social innovation projects and the multidisciplinary initiative Collective Awareness Platforms for Sustainability and Social Innovation in FP7 and H 2020. Thanks for being with us also, Fabrizio. So lastly, my name is Afonso Ferreira, and I'll be chairing this panel. I'm a director of research at the French National Center for Scientific Research, also known as the CNRS. For those who don't know it, the CNRS is home to most of the Nobel Prizes in France, including, for instance, this year's Physics Nobel Prize Alain Aspect. The CNRS is also the first recipient of funds in the Horizon programs for research and innovation. I'm currently leading my lab in 3 European projects at the nexus of digital technologies, policy, and futures. And in one of my hats, I'm head of European relations for the CNRS in the area of digital relations. And I am associated with CEPS in the Cybersecurity at CEPS initiative. Without further ado, so this panel will be started by myself giving briefly, so setting the scene of the metaverse and the issues that will be addressed today, as was requested by the panel members. So we start with history. So the metaverse is not a product, not even a brand of some social network company. It relates to the concept of a virtual world. Actually, it's a concept that dates back to at least the 19th century, but the actual term metaverse was used to name a futuristic concept coined in a science fiction book, The Snow Crash, in '92, and in a movie 20 years later, 10 years ago. So who here has heard about the metaverse? Yeah, most probably because there are plenty of ads in the Brussels airport, in the railway stations, so that's easy. So it refers to a new type of web platform which is supported through a comprehensive set of technologies, some of which are already consolidated, while others are in evolution. So they will allow users greater interactivity and socialization in immersive 3D digital environments represented by a universe of new digital virtual worlds. And there'll be plenty of different universes, plenty of different metaverses. So it's a hype, but it's a real. So a first wave of hype we had between 2000 and 2006, with many results and visibility, and then it went down, and now the second wave, we have it this year, probably because of this big social network that changed the name into the Meta. Now you have ads everywhere. We have a blog by Commissioner Breton that talked about the metaverse and put it in the center of the conversations in Brussels, and also in the work program of the European Commission for 2023. So the Commission is working on a white paper on the metaverse. We also have some metaverses like Second Life, Decentraland, So Many Space, Sandbox, Roblox, Horizon Worlds, and the like. Who here in this room have been to a metaverse already? We have a handful of people who actually have been to metaverse, and actually you can build your own metaverse for free in one of them. So what is the full vision of the metaverse that we embrace in this panel? So we think of the metaverse of something that is a system that is massive, so they can host an unlimited number, or at least a very high number of concurrent users. They're immersive. They offer three-dimensional and embodied experiences. They are persistent. They will never stop or reset, or at least that will be the perception of their users. So if you go away and you come back, whatever happened, the life that was there inside the metaverse will continue to happen like in the real world, the physical world. Metaverses will be open, so anyone with access to digital interfaces can go into them, moving within them as an avatar, interacting with other avatars, socialize, trade, build, produce intellectually, and so on. And finally, they'll be economically developed. There will be extensive trading goods and services within the metaverse, which may or may not have an impact in the physical world outside them. This vision, of course, will bring certainly many opportunities, with a great rush towards advanced technologies like Web 3.0, virtual augmented mixed reality, brain-computer interfaces, or blockchains. But it also, evidently, carry risks. After all, new web platforms with great interactivity and wider social reach that create new digital worlds will raise many questions and concerns in areas such as governance and regulations. In this new technological frontier that are metaverses, it's not clear what will be regulated, who will establish and enforce rules, or how this will be done. Also, in the area of cybersecurity and data protection, there'll be many risks and new issues and challenges. And that's why we're happy to have our distinguished panelists with us to shed light on prominent cybersecurity issues that may plague the metaverses and their development, but also to propose some measures that could avoid such issues. And so we'll start with Ellie, in order to shed some light on this. Thank you, Ellie. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So I thank you. I thank CEPS. I thank you, Afonso, Lorenzo, and esteemed audience for the opportunity to discuss this with you and to force me also to think about it. So these are thoughts that I'm just having. I will share with you my concerns with metaverse cybersecurity specifically, but first I must also put this in perspective. Virtual worlds, metaverse seems to be something new, but they really go back to Adam and Eve. The Garden of Eden was the first virtual world, a construct of our imagination. You don't need goggles to be transported from reality. In that story, humankind was expelled from a perfect world without shame and nakedness, that is, without a need for privacy. But then they were expelled to the real world when they were tempted by a snake to taste the fruits of knowledge, information, technology. And as they were expelled, God cursed them forever, future, for Adam, a lifetime of hard labor, and for Eve, the pain of childbirth, and also subordination to her husband. And next thing you know, in the real world, their sons kill each other and marry their sisters. So this is the archetypal narrative. The past is golden, but then it is lost. The future is real, but dystopic. In between lies the discovery of more knowledge. So whenever a new technology emerges, it also starts out as the Garden of Eden, and soon the serpent du jour appears and messes up that rosy scenario with new temptations. Right now, the snakes are Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and probably others you can put in there. So doomsday scenarios were widespread at every stage, early stage of every new media technology, the gramophone, film, radio, TV, cable TV, satellites, the internet, even print. Doomsday scenarios spread especially by the respective earlier generations of media that now gets unwelcome competition. So it is now with Metaverse. When a journalist calls me about Metaverse, nobody's asking me now about the business opportunities or the cultural opportunities and potential, but they talk about Metaverse problems. Metaverse problems is a story every day. And of course, there are problems. And I will talk to them, but we should keep in mind the positive potential and not focus on the doomsday, the negatives. And so let me talk now about Metaverse, or rather metaverses. I prefer the plural. There are, first of all, the traditional issues of internet and cyberspace more generally, and they're just in a way carried forward into the next iteration of online activities. But because metaverses are potentially visually so powerful and absorbing and might become billion, or according to some estimates, which I kind of like doubt, trillion-dollar industries, the malignancies are amplified. And so therefore the impact of vulnerabilities is magnified and security issues have become more important than ever. So what are some of these issues? The obvious ones, and I don't have to go into great detail here, I just can transport privacy, of course. Everybody talks about that. Biometric information. You have cameras in your goggles, right inside on your head, tracking your eyes, tracking your facial expression. All this can be visible to an advertiser or a seller. Or if you work and meet on metaverse spaces, like in group meetings, everything gets recorded for posterity and never gets lost. And hackers can get access to that information, so it is important. Now there is financial cybercrime, consumer fraud, malicious encryption, all kinds of other stuff, morality issues, the usual problems. But when we go to more specific metaverse issues, there is, for example, there's the problem of digital twins and sabotaging digital twins. Digital twins are 3D replicas of the blueprints, for example, of a bank building or a subway system or a train station or of a patient's life support system. And if you can hack it, you can cause a real disruption, sabotage of critical infrastructure, for example, or worse. On the social scene, there is harassment and stalking. When you meet together on the internet, you can be nice to each other, but you can also be harassing, engaging in sexual misconduct. And in fact, there have already been complaints about sexual misconduct in which some people's avatars have been groping or attacking other people's avatars. Then there are the impersonations and identity theft, particular serious issues, spoofing. A scammer can make an avatar look like you and talk like you and persuade your grandmother to send money or tell your fiance that you're breaking up with him or make political statements that the real you would never make. Or participate in classes and take exams through your avatars and AI while the real you lies on the beach getting a suntan. And then there is the impersonation of service providers. Are you sure that the doctor you speak to is a real doctor or financial advisor? So you have no idea whether you're dealing with a real professional or not, or a fake one. And then there are the transactions. Are the handbags that you buy on the, let's say, Gucci store, real Gucci's, or is the whole store a fake? And NFTs, which are one of the things that get traded on Metaverse, of artwork or of virtual handbags, Gucci's, are they legitimate or are they counterfeits? Can they be maliciously encrypted? Do you have to pay ransom to get access to your own property? And the user devices, which are vulnerable because they are kind of smallish, controlled by users at the edge rather than at the center. And so they provide entry points into the whole system. Now, all of these are important issues, but I would say they're kind of predictable issues. In some ways, if you think about it a bit deeper, there are also more fundamental issues. There are the basic contradictions of societal and corporate trade-offs that affect cybersecurity. And a first trade-off here is the trade-off between cybersecurity and a diverse and centralized open metaverse without market power. Because we do want to have diversity and we do want to have competition and openness. There's a whole community, Web3 community, that is advocating an open system with excellent arguments. But the more decentralized and diverse a system becomes, the harder it becomes to control breaches. The same goes for interoperability, connecting different metaverses and different providers. The more of a walled garden ecosystem you have, the more you can control it. And the more interconnected and open things are, the harder it becomes to connect. Second, then there is the trade-off between cybersecurity and network performance. For the proper operation of the metaverse, it is essential to have low latency. And right now, partly because of something called the Border Gateway Protocol, BGP, traffic moves slower than it could move without it. So from New York, for example, to San Francisco takes about 4 times slower than physics would predict. So to lower latency, we may end up reducing the BGP nodes, that is the servers, and thereby lower the number of control points and therefore reduce cybersecurity. Similarly, to reduce latency, you can put a lot of the processing and storage at the edge so it doesn't have to travel so much, and not in the cloud. So thereby too, you increase vulnerability. And then there's the trade-off between cybersecurity and transparency. Users and application providers and consumers, protection and financial agencies, law enforcement, society at large rightly demands transparency. But such transparency also makes it easier for hackers to figure out how to operate. And fourth, there's the trade-off between cybersecurity and anonymity, which is part of virtual worlds and which is part of the allures of cryptocurrency. The more anonymity you allow through avatars and AI and blockchain, the easier it is for negative actors to function. And so then, coming to my last point, beyond those contradictions is the relationship of the real world with the virtual world. Metaverses blur the distinction of real and virtual. On the one hand, virtual is supposed to be isn't supposed to be true, but it's a fantasy. And what's wrong with the fantasy? Controlling it for reality is like controlling literature for reality. You don't want to do that. And what's wrong with multiple personas? Don't we act differently when we are at home or when we're at work or when we are at a football match? You really want to control that. But on the other hand, there are major transactions being done on these fantasy worlds. Things get bought and sold billions and allegedly trillions in the future. People deal with each other. User communities emerge. And these communities are self-defined. But then could a community self-define itself as for whites only, or no clothes, only nudists? Is this something one should control? And if so, how can one control this when the access is so porous and impersonation is so easy? And where malicious individuals can create a real mess, where they are likely to emerge havens, community havens for illegal transactions or of antisocial conduct. So if the community is owned by a company and runs by its rules or morals, then we also have a problem of kind of corporate control over societies. So sooner or later, we have to deal with these questions, whether they want to register avatars like a car, whether avatars have legal personality, of who has jurisdiction over transgressors, who defines what transgressions are, who is in charge of enforcement, and what is the system of dispute resolution. But one cannot even deal with these problems. And there are many fundamental problems. There are many metaverse issues, and cybersecurity seems to be just one of them. But one cannot really deal with the other problems if one doesn't have control over access and usage, because otherwise anonymous and negative actors can gain access, and then they will destroy trust and deter people from use and from transaction and from interacting and having fun and adventures. So cybersecurity is a precondition to a well-functioning system of metaverses. So if you believe that metaverses have a cultural and business future, as I do, you got to take care of cybersecurity. And how? I will try to answer this later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eli. Would you prefer that the questions are asked now because you have to leave earlier, or we are fine?
I'm fine with our next speakers, and then I'll be
very good.
To speak.
So we'll turn to Josef here. So for your initial statement. Thank you. I understand you have, yes, the slides, they are there.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I represent the Hybrid Center of Excellence in Helsinki, in Finland. And of course, we are dealing also with cyber matters, cyber security, cyber defense, cyber attacks. And I prepared for you a short presentation, starting with the question where we are principally. I will immediately go through it. Think about it. 30 years ago, the first computers. Now you will laugh, I learned on them. Big computers, a very small screen, often black with green letters. So we started to be digital at that time. Then we started to be around 18, 20 years ago, digital media with Google, for example, came up. Then we saw digital business already, like Amazon, and we started to be transactional. Social media came up around 10, 15 years ago, WhatsApp, followed by Facebook, by Twitter, etc., etc. And currently we are in the time of social business, and we want to speak about, and we heard already a lot about it, or something about it, about the metaverse. Connected, adaptive, but also intelligent, so the metaverse. And that brings me to the question of new technologies. If we speak about the metaverse, for me it's some kind of new technology. And when we speak about new technologies, we must look how many years one product needed to gain 50 million users. A long, long time ago, the airplane needed 70 years nearly. Credit card, 30 years nearly. ATM, 18 years. But then it started to be more faster and faster and faster. With the time of the computer came up, needed a lot of time. The internet as it needed 7 years to gain 50 million users. Social media, YouTube, Twitter, okay, Twitter only 9 months, but then Fortnite, computer game. But the most important, TikTok. I'm sure some of you have little children. I have at all 4, between 13 and 35. The 2 younger are amazed of TikTok. And it's an absolutely nightmare for me, for every parent, I think. But what I want to say, if you produce a little application, only video sharings, you have within 11 days access to 450 million kids all over the world between 10 and 15. I only want to show you that before we look a little bit more in the metaverse. So if you look at products and if you are looking at new technologies, like intelligent drones, like artificial intelligence, like cloud computing, Internet of Things, etc., but also, of course, the metaverse, all the new technologies have their relation to cyber. Whether they are programmed in cyberspace, they are running in cyberspace, they are dealing with the cyberspace, whatever. All of them have their relation to cyber. So a short step to the metaverse. What is the metaverse? Yeah, we already heard it. It's virtual. Can be made also business. It's very broad. But our moderator asked at the beginning, who of you has already something to do or had something to do with the metaverse? Yeah? But do you really know what the metaverse is? I cannot give you an answer. I only know about, but I will tell you what I know now. A little bit more. This is a successful project in the metaverse, launched in October that year from Interpol. And the Interpol Executive Director, Mr. Madan Oberoi, said that the metaverse has the potential to transfer the daily lives of the policemen worldwide, with enormous implications for law enforcement and for the police, of course. The Interpol metaverse is already partly fully operational, allowing the connected officers to interact through their avatars, so they can change information, they even can give papers to their colleagues worldwide. And he said that the metaverse has the potential to transform every aspect of our daily lives, with enormous implications for law enforcement. Okay, this was maybe a successful project, maybe something successful. Now another example, the Metaverse Baby. This is a project from former Facebook, from Meta, that they want, this is one of their projects from Meta, from the department, they are developing it, will lead to an evolution of virtual babies. Yes, it's for this I also don't know, I can remember very well, Tamagotchi, who had his or her Tamagotchi feeding on a monthly basis, and if it was boring, we did not switch on anymore. Yeah. Okay, the same will be the baby, the virtual baby. You put on your glasses and you have your babies, and when it becomes boring, you put the glasses away. Will cost you $25 per month. Okay, also an example. But when we speak about the metaverse, we must know that not only Mark Zuckerberg is thinking about that. Also NVIDIA in Silicon Valley is preparing some kind of metaverse. They call it Omniverse. And they expect around 200 million personal computers or laptops being replaced in 10 years by VR glasses. The expectation is great. I don't know if it will be, but that's the goal from them. And now I come to the threat also, of course. If you look at that sketch, yeah, Internet has been operational since mid-80s. It was exactly that time where I learned, as one of the few people, I learned computer technology in high school. It was mid-80s, and yes, you will not believe, I was a little hacker at that time. I loved to hack. I learned BASIC as a computer language, still knowing and still in use, BASIC. My second computer language was Symfony. Nobody knows that anymore, yeah, because it was too complicated. However, I programmed my first files in BASIC, self-replicant files, put it in emails and sent and terrorized my friends, for example. Yeah? It was harmless. Yeah? I only was programming, for example, Santa Claus jumping out or something like that. Then I joined military academy, married, and only 10 years later, I could not understand the files anymore, the new files. And that's going on, and the rise in the last 20 years is dramatically. So we are dealing with an increased complexity of, unfortunately, successful attacks, for example. But we are not only dealing with an increasing complexity of successful attacks, we are also dealing with an increasing cross-linking. So we have IP at home, we have everybody of us smartphones, we have smart TVs, we have smart kitchen, we have smart toilets, we have smart everything. Everything is smart, smart elevators, smart shopping center, but also in the industry, of course. Everything is more and more intellect, also in the military. So we are dealing with an increasing complexity of successful attacks, with an increasing degree of cross-linking, but also with a decreased understanding of the whole system architecture. Fewer and fewer people know what is going on. There are less and less people that really know how to influence the whole thing, the whole cyberspace. And we want to deal with Metaverse or with Omniverse or whatever. There I see the threat. Yes, and when we speak about Meta's Metaverse and NVIDIA's Omniverse, they mean the same about, we must also speak about the multiverse. That's a common South Korean, Japanese project, also meaning the same. So competition started already. And Meta has sunk, for example, a lot of money, $36 billion since 2019. And Mark Zuckerberg said, still optimistic, they will make another 4 or 5 years not that money. NVIDIA sunk the half, but also even $18 billion in that project. And for me also the question is, who will get it? Will everybody get it? And how, for example, if it's really a wish from the metaverse or the multiverse or whatever, how I will pay there? Of course, only with cryptocurrency, but what kind of cryptocurrency? And if we speak about paying with cryptocurrency, we have all the threats what is linked with cryptocurrencies. So this is also, for me, a threat. This was my presentation. I'm looking forward for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. So if we could get Fabrizio back on the screen. So the panelists that are with us from away. Yes, Fabrizio, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Could you share? Yes. Could you share with us your thoughts from your perspective?
Yes, thanks. Actually, I would like to use some slides, a few also to go perhaps more quickly from the next generation internet perspective, which is the area I'm following now. So what I would like to talk about actually is 3 issues. So one is the digital decade 2030 communication. The second is this next generation internet initiative. And then I would like also to quickly mention the digital commons initiative, which I think can play a role also in the metaverse. So the first thing is this declaration, which was published in January 2022, which sets a number of principles we should apply to all digital technologies supported by the European Commission. And these are principles which then will clearly apply also to the metaverse, to any metaverse developments supported or regulations supported by the European Commission. The first point is about putting people at the center. So not economics, not politics, but really the
Okay, so I think we have to. Yeah, but it's too late that he didn't send his slides. So, yeah. Okay, so Xavier, if you could just bring Ellie back, and then we try to connect to Fabrizio later on.
I hear you. If you hear me, I hear you.
Yes, very good. So yeah, so we'll move to.
But I don't see you. But
yes, now you can
now
see.
I see.
Yes,
now I
very
see.
good. So yeah, so since Fabrizio lost the connection, which is unfortunate, so I'd like to start with a question to you, Ellie. So what can be done in order for us to reduce these metaverse cybersecurity problems that you have identified? There's so many, but is there anything to be done now?
Well, I think that while the problems, some of them are real, some of them are hypothetical, some of them will be kind of future, but I think we should not rush into action. We should take a respectful pause before taking action, a pause for thinking. And let's also appreciate, as I said, the positives, not only the negatives. Because if one focuses on the negatives, one puts in restrictions to prevent it, and then absolutely nothing happens, and you have great protections, but there's nothing to protect against because it doesn't happen. So there are three basic approaches: the governmental action, rules, laws, etc., directives, and one has to find a sweet spot between doing something too early and doing something too late when it's already the horse is out of the barn. And not every conceivable negative has to be dealt with in advance. Let's give it the new medium, some breathing space. There are already plenty of laws on the books on privacy, on fraud, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as if there's no law at all. But having said that, I'm kind of pessimistic about the ability of bureaucracies, Washington, Brussels, wherever, to hold off from acting. We have a world where America and China export technology and export business applications. But in some ways, I hope I'm kind of not being unfair, Europe has been recently being more exporting regulations. And this will continue. Even though, think about it, rules and more rules are easier for big companies to comply with. So this actually increases barriers to entry and reduces competition and future competition. And so also inevitably any rules about cybersecurity will also include other policy goals that have nothing to do with cybersecurity, such as cultural sovereignty or social harmony or industrial policy. But what governments can do is to settle with each other, with other governments, these interjurisdictional issues. It's so much easier to beat up Meta or to beat up Google rather than to clean up situations with Liechtenstein or with Panama, et cetera, and other haven countries. And they can also set up some basic parameters, nothing very specific, but basic parameters. Just don't rush. And the second approach is the industry self-regulation and collaboration, which on the surface of it sounds really good. You know, you increase trust in the whole system, but self-regulation of industries almost inevitably, if you look at history, ends up with some kind of cartel management of large companies with each other. And so that also serves to increase, to help dominant firms and reduce entry. And the third and last approach is to use market forces to deal with cyber threats. And how would this work? Well, if you have a relatively diverse metaverse system with multiple providers, they can offer different protections to their users. Who else would be a user, and what the nature of anonymity is, and what you can do and what you can't. And so they will compete with each other, and users can choose which metaverse they would like to do. More aggressive moderation, less, et cetera, et cetera. And this would be based on some these underlying parameters of government. And so it's not totally in vacuum. And the last thing that you then need also for user choice is for users to be well informed. So they have to have transparency, and that might be a governmental function to ensure. And there has to be some metaverse literacy in which people understand right from the beginning what the problems and what the challenges are. And so this is therefore what I think what governments can do and what they should not do, which is to rush into action on specifics.
Thank you very much. So I see that Fabrizio is back. So Fabrizio, I would suggest that you don't use your slides. Perhaps that's what actually broke the connection. So I was told here. So if you could continue your presentation, but without using the slides, that would be at least some kind of mitigation.
Sure, we can try. So I was reading actually out these points of the Declaration of Digital Rights and Principles. Was the freedom of choice, which is a key to ensure interoperability for all these metaverses, which is a right to give a right to consumers, of course, and also to avoid repeating errors of the past, because when we say that the European Commission is putting too much regulations up front, well, actually, the problem with the GAFAs that we have nowadays are due to a lack of regulation up front, stemming also from a lack of understanding of the issues at stake when these platforms developed and went to market. Then another point in this declaration is the importance of participation, so that these digital systems must not only support participation of citizens in democratic activities, for instance, or any other kind of local or global organizations, but also must encourage that. So to provide systems which are really functional for this kind of participation, which is one of the objectives of the metaverse as well, to involve people, to let people be together. Then, of course, there is a point on safety and security, which is essential to ensure trustworthiness of the system. Although I would agree here that catering for all the unknown unknowns of the system is impossible at this moment. Which doesn't mean that we should ignore the known unknowns that we have been dealing with already, and then also, again, not avoiding or repeating the errors of the past. And then there is a last point in this declaration, which is last but not least, which is the importance of sustainability in these systems. So not only sustainability inwards in the sense of developing systems which are conscious of the environment, of energy consumption, particularly important for heavy simulations, and of course attentive to all kinds of environmental impact of the systems themselves, but also sustainability outwards. So in the sense that these systems should actively support sustainability in the sense, for instance, of attention to environmental or climate change or energy consumption, nudging behaviors, etc., etc. So this, I think, is very important, if you want, theoretical, but a framework for the principles which should guide developments. The second point that I wanted to talk about is this Next Generation Internet Initiative, which we launched some 5 years ago, and which is based on a vision of the Internet, which is very much human-centric, again, as opposed to the industry, commercial-oriented Internet that, for the good or for the bad, that we have nowadays in our hands. So an Internet where the values are openness, So usage of open source, open hardware, open innovation, open data as basis for guaranteeing this kind of independence from incumbents and strong controls. Then a value of privacy and trust, which is values for citizens. The importance of decentralization, and this decentralization not only to ensure freedom of the people, but also to actually ensure a higher degree of control, contrary to what I had before. Of these, there are different schools. Decentralization, not having a single entity controlling everything, can actually guarantee a more distributed degree of control, which may be much more effective than that which can be implemented by a single source. Then a value of inclusion and of sustainability. And this is an initiative mainly oriented at supporting innovators, high-tech startups, open source developers, and also individual researchers in developing technologies, for instance, on data sovereignty, on decentralized technologies, blockchain, on search and discovery alternatives to the incumbent search engines, and in general on internet architectures and standards. It's an initiative actually which has managed insofar to reach some 1,000 innovators through small grants which are very quickly awarded and implemented. And there is actually a call now open on for funding innovators on pilots for the next generation internet. So then how does this next generation internet position itself in the developments which are needed for the metaverse? Well, it's at the level, if you want, of the technologies for the access to the web. Is not at the level of the content creation, for which there are already many areas funded by the European Commission on the artificial intelligence, digital twins, virtual humans, media, etc. And then there is another level which is not directly part of next generation internet, but which is covered by research, which is the level of security and trust. And there we find the areas of security. So there is cybersecurity, e-privacy, content verification, which are very important elements. But also there is the area of digital identity, EID, and the area of blockchain, which now includes also NFTs, which is important for its support, of course, of cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, but also decentralized systems in general. And then finally, I wanted to talk about this digital commons, which is a concept which has been defined very recently in June of this year by the French presidency, about a way of defining non-rivalrous, non-exclusive digital resources defined by shared production, maintenance, and governance. So examples of these are open source software, open hardware, but also open design, open standards, such as the Internet Commons, which are actually at the root of most of the Internet developments and will be at the root of the metaverse as well. Open data and open data production, such as data which is done within Wikipedia, over OpenStreetMap, over Linux systems. And digital commons are particularly important for the metaverse because on one side, they support sovereignty. So they provide the foundations for collective control of the system, for affordable systems, which means inclusion, for permissionless innovation, not having to rely on closed standards developed by private companies, no lock-in in these kind of solutions, and the possibility to decentralize the system. On the other side, they support trust and security. So, and actually, I would like perhaps to share this slide, is only hoping the system will will stand up. So trust and security is because digital commons are key for transparency, for privacy protection, for user control and choice, for portability, for inclusion, and for, of course, cybersecurity. So this is the end of what I wanted to say. And I remain open for questions and to participate in the discussion which may follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrizio, and I'm really sorry for the technical glitches, but thank you very much for coping with it so well. I would like to come back to the room here and actually ask a question to Josef, because that picture that you showed about the decreased understanding of the system architecture is really worrying, in the sense that we're talking about the metaverse that will be the integration of a very big number of technologies that are evolving as we speak. So what do you see as the biggest dangers that will this, I mean, less knowledge of architecture, of an understanding of architecture and the integration of a number of technologies will bring into the metaverse?
Thank you very much for the question. Well, I think the biggest answer, and that's for me really the hugest problem, is education. Education everywhere, wherever is it possible, starting in primary school, because the cyberspace is something what was growing up in the last 30 years dramatically. There's nothing possible anymore without using the cyberspace. Therefore, educational training is an asset and is very important. Awareness training, of course, we know it from cybersecurity. European Union, NATO, they are all behind awareness trainings. But before I can answer that question, really, I think we must wait what will be the metaverse. Yeah, you said it already. Yeah, it will be virtual. It will be a lot of new technologies involved, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, etc., etc. But what will be the real output? Then we know it's better, and we must be prepared, of course.
Thank you. So I remember that Ali mentioned in the example of Gucci bags. Actually, there are Vuitton bags that are sold. I mean, the digital version of the Vuitton bags that are sold for more money in the metaverse than they are sold in the high street. So yeah, that's a new world for sure. So would you have any kind of future policy recommendations for the metaverse, Ali? I mean, taking that into account, that humans are in the loop?
I think one has to be realistic and assume that for all the positives that we can conceive here, that there will be bad actors. And there will be bad acting communities, and the jurisdictional issues are impenetrable. So I think at a certain point, some of the major internet countries have to come and kind of deal with some convention of sort and control points and identification requirements that kind of override total anonymity. To make it possible to have any form of law enforcement here. Otherwise, this will be a shadow economy, a dark economy with criminals and tax cheats and fraud rampant. And not because 99% of people, as always, will be kind of totally there for the fun, but the 1% is going to spoil it for everybody. So I think one has to start really thinking about this. And try to keep this away from industrial policy type considerations and sovereignty considerations. I mean, because once you make this into kind of a Christmas tree type thing in which every country gets a little bit of something that they want, it'll be a mess.
Thank you. So I'd like to hear from Fabrizio now. So about this policy issue. So I heard Ellie saying a lot about, I mean, the advantages of central against distributed, and I heard you saying a lot about the benefits of distributed against central. So, and the yes, Ellie. So, if I got it wrong,
I'm not advocating centrality. I'm just telling you what the trade-offs are. That the more decentralization you have, the harder it becomes to control.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Fabrizio, so about policies and these trade-offs.
Oh, for sure, it's harder to control in a decentralized system, but it may be no less effective or actually can achieve a larger degree of efficacy than in the centralized system. Insofar, in my knowledge, the only centralized system which has managed to provide a very high level of security is the Apple ecosystem. But do we want all to live in an Apple metaverse or not? Because if there are different solutions, then there will be different policies as well for this. Well, that is the trade-off. It's a bit the same reasoning which applies to open source developments for security and the two different schools. And in particular, the one supporting the idea that open source being more transparent and more subject to scrutiny by a larger community can actually guarantee higher level of security than a closed system where only a few people belonging to the same culture, if you want, can control and make the system less vulnerable to attacks.
Yes, and coming back to these policy conversations, so as I mentioned in the beginning, Commissioner Breton published a blog, and after that, the European Commission put the Metaverse into its work program for next year. So certainly we'll have policy coming out of Italy, in spite of your strong disagreement with that. So, but anyways, are there questions from the floor now? We still have 5 minutes. Yes, we have at least 2 hands open, up. No, you have to.
Does it work? Okay. So why, because it comes again from the United States, Metaverse, why do you let it happen? Why don't you stop that? I know that there's a juicy market, and the Americans, they are different from the Europeans. They even start, children, middle class, they start between 10 and 12, dealing with making money, developing something. We are different. I mean, you don't have regulations in the United States. You let the market regulate. But here, Metaverse will be extremely difficult to regulate. And we don't want, like we have already, we had it in Belgium, hacking a hospital and paying a ransom, otherwise the data would be given out.
Yes, but okay? Very good. So the question is, so why
do we let it happen?
Yes, okay. So
okay?
Josef.
There are things that are good and there are things that are not so good. Yeah.
Okay, I will give a first answer maybe, hopefully. Thank you for the question before my colleagues maybe want to answer. I'm dealing with the Metaverse since 2 years exactly. 2 years, why? 2 years ago, everybody can remember back, deep Corona times, sitting at home for weeks, no school, home office, school, kids, everybody at home. My smaller kids asked me, Papa, we want for Christmas this virtual reality glasses. I thought, okay, they are poor, I'm poor, hopefully they will play then with that. Yes, they played, and I tried it also. Yeah, I was playing with them, and then I thought I must deal a little bit more with the Metaverse to know what is going on, what is there. Yeah, you cannot forbid it. Yeah, especially for children, because then it becomes more interesting. That's the easiest answer. Thank you.
Yeah, Fabrizio.
I wonder actually, Afonso, whether we can take more questions and answer all together, because I see that the time is very short now.
Okay, yes, we have one. So there's one other question in the room, so that's a good.
Thank you. Maria Boca, EU Strategy. The moderator has hinted that the Commission has something up their sleeve for next year. So I wanted to ask if Fabrizio can illuminate us a little bit. We hear that there might be some public consultation and some kind of initiative coming towards the end of the year. So if you could elaborate a little bit on the timeline and perhaps also on the content about what's coming. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, if you could quickly address that, because we're getting to an end here.
Yeah. Okay, well, about the first question, I tend to have some sympathy for part of the question as well, actually, but I don't think that we can stop things happening, or that we should leave it all in the hands of the US incumbents. So something has to be done and will be done by the Commission. And again, the approach will be based on principles very similar to those that I mentioned for the Declaration of Digital Rights. So a vision of the metaverse, or whatever name we wanted to give to it, which is based on people, so respecting European values and rules, the human centricity that I mentioned, trustworthiness, safeness, and ethical values. Not necessarily defining which ethical values, but just to make sure that the ethical values associated with the universe are clear to everybody. And then, of course, developing technologies which will be basis for this, again, not to stay out of this thing, which apart from the societal importance, which is, if you wanted, probably the more important value to be preserved, but will also have a very significant economic value. As Eli mentioned, there are several estimates, but some of them put the value of the multiverse at several trillion euros in 2030. Then there is the need, of course, to ensure there are infrastructures adequate for supporting the multiverse, that there is an adequate source of content creation, and in this there is a long tradition of Europe in producing cultural and media content. And there is a need to ensure that there are standards which are open by default for all, which are decentralized and interoperable. In this sense,
sorry to
it's
interrupt,
important.
but
Yeah.
the time. So
about
what about the second question?
Yes, about the second question, well, what I mentioned is a pilots for the next generation internet, which is a call of the Horizon Europe program in 2023. And it is to foster the take-up of next generation internet solutions and technologies by integrating them in a variety of industrial and societal use cases. It's not for the metaverse or specific for the metaverse yet, of course, but it is a way to see how these European developed technologies for the next generation internet can be integrated, can be put at use in concrete social cases, social applications for the benefit of citizens.
Thank you,
So
Fabrizio.
the focus will be on open source solutions.
Eli, do you have closing words? Quick.
Well, I mean, you can pass all the directives you want, and they will include wonderful sounding things that nobody can disagree with, and we call this virtue signaling. But the question is how you deal with. We're talking about cybersecurity right now. How do you deal with bad actors? And I'm not sure if kind of the fact is that for all the rules and regulations, cybersecurity is compromised around the world, including in Europe. And that's the issue at hand. And so the question is how one kind of deal with that. I don't think that a wholesale prohibition of metaverse is even conceivably possible, even if you can enforce it worldwide. The kind of the 3D, I mean, how you somehow you legislate against the third dimension of computers. I just don't see how this could be possible. And once the technology is there, there will be some people who will be bad actors. And the question now is how law enforcement and companies and the system as a whole can deal with that. That's the question here. And I don't think it's a America versus Europe type issue at all.
No, I think that you said it correctly. So it's just the beginning of the conversation, because the metaverses are starting to appear. They mainly in Asia, by the way, not the United States. And so yeah, so there is a lot of to be done on governance and cybersecurity. So I'd like to thank all the speakers in this panel. I'd like to thank Javier, who's in the technical room there, because it was challenging this. So a round of applause for all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a short coffee break, so 10 minutes so 3:30 be back in this room. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eli, Fabrizio. Have a good flight. Fabrizio, continue well.
Thank you, everybody. I wish I would be there with you.